The 2024 Olympics in Paris have arrived in a different format and schedule for the PGA Tour. So many stars are at Le Golf National in Paris. Scotty Scheffler is there, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele. Who is going to come out on top? And is this course going to play different than it did in 2018 for the Ryder Cup? Chris Brees, Matt Delvecchio, and Will Gray. Who's going to say it's way different, right, from 2018, Will?
The course that I saw for that Ryder Cup 6 years ago was definitely stout. They grew the rough up. I know that we were doing some research before this about maybe it won't be quite as difficult as we saw back in 2018, but you remember that at that point it was under the control of Ryder Cup Europe, and they were setting up the course to play to their strengths, which were ball strikers, and it was trying to punish people that strayed off the tee, which were most of the Americans on that team back in 2018. So they wanted to have narrow fairways. They wanted to have thick rough. That's what they did. It was no surprise to see the Europeans dominate that week. Now it's on more of a level playing field, and we've seen it in the years since then as it's hosted the French Open on the DP World Tour for more than 20 years now. So we have a pretty good sample size of what this course can look like and how demanding it can be. But as we're seeing in these flyovers, I mean, there's moguls, there's hills, there's water. The 18th hole is iconic with this island green setup. You're going to have to golf your ball here at Le Golf National to get that gold medal.
I mean, you look at the average winning score from the French Open since 2002 when it started the Golf National, minus 11. So there's going to be some good scores. There's going to be some high scores. It's going to be fun to watch. Matt, I know we were joking earlier the fact that we've been trying to hype up international players, not so much American players, because let's face it, there's been a moniker on some American players that, they're not really going to care about this outside of the PGA Tour, but that's bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, what's the storyline, right? Like, there's clearly debate between Americans and European in the golf world, right? So it's obviously the Ryder Cup that pushes that along. But when we look at golf on a national scale or on an international scale, the Americans have been showing out. I mean, 7 straight majors have been won by Americans. They've won 5 out of the last 10 Opens. And then on their home turf, Europeans aren't winning on the home turf. U.S. Opens, 8 of the last 10 have been won by Americans. So this American-European beef, I think, is real. And are we going to treat this like a major? Are we going to treat this like a Ryder Cup? Like, this is center stage in France. I think there's something to say there with the international players, specifically Europeans versus the Americans.
Well, I think we also, Chris, have to talk about the field composition, right? Usually for the majors, it's 40-50% Americans, even when it's across the pond. This week we have 4 Americans out of 60. So every other country basically either has 1 or a maximum of 2. The U.S. is the only country with more than 4 representatives because they were all inside the top 50 in the rankings at the cutoff after the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. So, this isn't a situation where you've got 150 guys teeing off and 70, 80, 90 of them are from America. It's top heavy, as you see there, with Scotty Scheffler and recent Open champion Xander Schauffele leading the way, in addition to Colin Morikawa and Wyndham Clark. But 56 out of 60, there's a great chance that the winner of the gold medal this week is going to be someone outside the US of A.
And, we're looking at the course flyover here, and I think a big deal does need to be made of how different the rough's going to be. I mean, these American players couldn't keep the ball in play to save their lives 6 years ago. They're going to have a little more wiggle room. The fairway width will be the exact same as it was at the Ryder Cup, but there's going to be more general rough out there because you want to talk about some of these players, not just American players, players in general who are going to need that extra 5-10 yards going either way off the fairway. So I don't personally see it as a carnage type thing. I see it more of a, any kind of player can win, even the guys who aren't hitting the ball that great off the tee.
Yeah, I think that they're going to try and keep it as wide open as they can. This is something where the IGF is setting up the course, and you want it to be neutral, where you're not playing to a specific caliber or type of player like maybe the Ryder Cup Europe contingent was ahead of the 2018 matches, where they said, hey, we want to emphasize this, we want to de-emphasize that. This is going to be a more open playing field, and as you said, I think we're going to see a ton of high scores. It's easy to make double bogey or worse at Le Golf National. You don't have to work that hard for it. But at the same time, depending on where they put the pins, there will be some mid-60 scores available. And so as we look back at that average score over the last few years of 11 under par, that might be a good gauge of what we're looking at for winning a medal, if not the gold medal. If you need to get into double digits under par, and then from there you'll take your chances. I think it'll be certainly a little bit of a different setup than what we saw 3 years ago in Tokyo or even at Rio back in 2016.
Matt, you made the comment about, are we treating this like a major? I
Mhm.
feel like the Olympics, people, I think they care more about it than the average Joe on the street assumes. I mean, the average Joe thinks it's the majors and then everything else. I think the Olympics is up there. And I think you can really point to Xander's win a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
where really, I mean, we can laugh about it, but I think it's legit. Like, this was his stepping stone to learning how to win those big events, and we can't take that lightly. I mean, there could be like 5 Xanders this year, guys who were learning how to win and use the Olympics as that stepping stone.
Yeah, it's a good point about Xander winning the Olympics. I mean, you heard him after he got one gold, how much it meant to him. People have been asking about him all last couple of years. Like, it did mean a lot. And I think that's something that we can take back and be like, these players do very much care. But do they care as much as maybe one of those countries who haven't won gold? What about a country with some really hot golfer right now who's like, we have never won gold in golf before. I want to go win gold right now. So I do think they care probably more than the fans do, but that is what that major atmosphere really feels like.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some players, as you said, that maybe you think of as the, other elements of the field. I think of Fabrizio Zanotti from Paraguay. He's going to be the flag bearer for Paraguay at the Olympics. The entire Paraguayan, Olympic contingent, he's holding the flag. That's how big of a deal it is for him to be there representing his country. He's a multiple-time Olympian. But there are, places that are more far-flung around the world where winning any medal at the Olympics and even in golf is going to be a huge deal. You become an overnight sensation and a hero. We've seen, even in South Korea, it matters for military service. And if these guys could potentially miss some time, from their playing career down the road. So it's definitely something that everyone's going to be motivated, but the specific motivations of each player from each country might be a little bit different.
I think you also need to look at, this list of, call them the top favorites. It's a long list here of everybody who's plus, 5,000 or better. I mean, some names stick out here. Shane Lowry is going to have a ton of pride. You got to think guys like Joaquin Niemann are going to have a ton of pride. Hideki Matsuyama, Jason Day. You can go on and on about so many guys who are going to want to compete for their country because, let's face it, they don't get to do that. They get lost in this PGA Tour, ridden world where it's tour events, it's majors, and then we don't really have anything else outside of that. So I think there's so many names on this list, Will, that really are going to care for their country when they never get to do it outside of this every 4 years. And they may never do it again.
Yeah, we've seen, World Cup events where there are some team events, and certainly the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup are an opportunity to embrace the team element from that. But yeah, it's special. You talk to anyone in any sport, the Olympics, those rings, what they look like, what they symbolize, and it's in many lines that, the pinnacle of the sport. And I think that as we get golf more ingrained in the Olympic fabric, essentially having come back in 2016 for the first time since 1904, there was a little bit of a novelty. But now if you have junior golfers growing up and even college golfers, maybe they're a little more used to seeing golf in the Olympics, and it can start to gain some traction for what it means as this competition every 4 years, and where it can go from here as we continue to grow both golf and the Olympics.
Okay, let's pick some winners. Are we hating on the Americans, Matt?
Yes, you guys are hating on the Americans. I got my American shirt on right now, and I'm telling you, this is something that Xander cares about. So you're getting arguably the best player in the field. I know, yeah, Scotty is, but you're arguably getting the best player, the hottest player in the field, I'll say that, at plus 650. I mean, that's pretty good value. You know that Xander cares about it, and I really think this American versus European conversation is a real one. We had to listen all about the Ryder Cup. The Europeans were bragging left and right. Well, the Americans are going to go, we're going to win all the majors, and then we're going to come to France, and we're going to win the gold medal over in France. So I think Xander is a great play here. Plus 650 isn't even that bad of a number when you look at the field. I like Xander, and I like the Americans to bring it home.
I think that, no one in that field is going to be not happy to be there, not motivated, not interested to play for their country. I think Xander trying to back up the gold medal, go back to back, that's a distinction that only he has as an opportunity this week. And that's certainly a special piece of motivation. But I think the other piece that really helps your cause is even going back before he bagged these two majors. Xander was a limited field specialist, right? Look at the format here. You've got 72 holes of stroke play, 60 guys, no cut. those are the types of events that Xander has played really well in over the course of his career, whether you're talking about playoff events, Tour Championship, at the Century, things like that. So I get where you're coming from. I still think that, potentially there are other ways to look. I'm going a little bit further down the board, even though Xander did win as pretty much a chalk pick 3 years ago. And Justin Rose, the gold medalist from 2016, was on the short list for odds as well. So I'm going to go with Shane Lowry. I'll give our friends across the pond a little bit of a nod here. I really like him both this week and at this course. Over at the Open a couple weeks ago in Scotland, he really impressed and really just got blown sideways by the weather during the third round at Royal Troon. Other than that, I think he would have been right in the mix. But when we look at the skill set that it takes to play well at Le Golf National, that feels to me like a Shane Lowry golf course. He's played well at Torrey Pines. He's played well at Firestone, some of these, ball strikers paradises, even PGA National at the U.S. side. And as a DP World Tour player, he also has that experience from seeing Le Golf National at the French Open year in and year out. So some of these players that are coming from elsewhere, even the 4 Americans, might not have as much experience of seeing this golf course outside of this week, whereas Shane Lowry has at least seen it before in tournament competition. So I really like him. I really like that number as you get down beyond like the plus 3,000 range. I think that there's a lot of value there for a top-tier player coming off a really strong performance at the Open a couple weeks ago, who could then convert it. And listen, we've seen him just a couple months ago, rather, at the Zurich, teaming with Rory McIlroy. Those two are going to be at it again this week, representing Ireland. I think that there's some good vibes there from being back in the foxhole with Rory. And even though this is an individual competition, there's still a little bit of that team element, and maybe that could be the edge that gives Shane Lowry another notch toward that gold medal.
Matt's smile made it seem like that's a cop-out answer.
Well, I just think, first of all, don't bring up Zurich. I can't stand bringing up Zurich for Shane Lowry. But is there no
He didn't do anything.
Is there no scar tissue for Shane Lowry? He kind of choked it away. He was the guy that everybody was looking at. His odds, I don't know how low it went, but I think it was around plus 200. There's no scar tissue.
Mm-hmm.
You think he just jumps right back into it and competes this week?
No, I think it's easier for him to stomach that result from Royal Troon because he has already won the Open. He's already won a major. There's not as much what ifs in that regard. And he didn't really do much wrong on Saturday. He just got caught in the bad part of the wave. Yeah, where he had gotten the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of the wave draw Thursday, Friday. He got way the worst of it on Saturday. And then the thing for me, Matt, is he played really well on Sunday. He came out, he birdied, I think, 4 of his first 5 or 6 holes. Like, he bounced back in a big way. If he had, gotten blown sideways on Saturday and then shot a 74 on Sunday, I might feel a little bit differently. But he came back and gave himself a chance, even though he ended up falling short. So that's why I'm going to take that as a net positive for the week, even though, as you said, he didn't back up where his odds got after the second round when he was the leader.
Well, and Shane Lowry just kind of seems like a prototypical chip-on-your-shoulder player. And it's a massive chip from last week, obviously, the way it ended at the Open. I think that's a good thing for him. Well, I agree. No?
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate your vote of confidence here. No, I think that it's something where players are going to react differently, and I think that Shane, being a veteran who's been through the ringer, he's had ups and downs. He blew a 4-shot lead at the U.S. Open, several years ago at Oakmont. So he's seen both sides of it, but I really think that it's going to be easier for him to stay grounded because he does have the Claret Jug from 2019. And now, listen, as we said, this is a big deal. This is a huge event, and this is a way for him to get back and really, heal those wounds. If you're able to play well again this week on a course where maybe you have a little bit of an edge, and then all of a sudden you're talking about being a gold medalist as opposed to thinking about letting a 2-time Open champion moniker get away from you.
I'm just saying, I think the narrative fits, and I think the narrative fits for my winner. I really do believe you can call these the stepping stones of learning how to win big, because we might be making a bigger deal of Ludvig Aberg not winning majors and being ready than we should. I think the sample size of 2024 would probably tell you that he still is learning. He's still figuring out the big moments, where to miss on specific courses. This could be the kind of place and atmosphere and setting for Ludvig to do that. If we're going to call it a step down from the majors, what's the next best thing for him to win? It would be the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what's the history of like Swedish players winning gold medals? I mean, has there been a Swedish player to win the gold
I
medal in
mean,
golf?
Stenson got the silver medal at
Right.
Rio in 2016, so
Okay.
there's that precedent.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he could take a step up, but yeah, I mean Ludwig, this would absolutely be a cherry on a cake of what was an amazing season. And if he does win this, we would look back and would be like, wow, what an amazing season he had in majors. But he's also the gold medal winner, so absolutely, your stepping stone conversation and narrative, I think, is very much applicable to Ludwig for
No,
sure.
no one's gonna deny his talent, and I think if we're not gonna call this the pressure of a major, Will, I think it fits him perfectly because if he doesn't have that pressure, like what would have happened at the U.S. Open if he didn't have that pressure? It didn't have the course set up there. I mean, what do you think would have happened after two
I
rounds?
mean, yeah, it's a butterfly effect. Tough to gauge exactly how that would have played out. I think I'm going to go the other way. I think we had Rick Gehman on a couple weeks ago and mentioned this, and I'm going to agree with the thoughts that I'm going to now say that he said because I'm pretty sure it was him. I'm going to be late on Ludwig, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm just not going to go out on that branch to say, yeah, I'm going to bet him at 10-1, 11-1, 12-1, whatever. If I can get exact odds on Ludwig winning the bronze medal, sign me up because I think he has the game to be contend. I think he's going to be in the mix. I still don't think he has that extra level to really get there. Now, listen, this is a lot of the same stuff that rhetoric that we'd have been talking about with Xander in 2021, right? Where he maybe he
Exactly.
can be in the mix and he has it there, but can he get over the edge? And then he went and did it. But listen, Ludvig Aberg is a great talent who's continuing to on the rise. I think he's going to be better in 3 years from now than he is today for sure. And he's still pretty good right now. But there are some key learnings that he is still going through, as you mentioned, both at the Masters when he was a runner-up. He let it get away over the weekend at the U.S. Open. I think this is still part of that process where he's not yet ready to blossom and get that win. But as you said, he has every facet of the game to where it would not at all surprise me to see him in the mix for a medal coming home on Sunday.
Last comment just on Ludwig, real quick. I mean, is his knee okay? Like, we're just forgetting about his knee
I
injury?
mean, he's been in the mix way too much for us to
he
assume
has,
that it's an issue. Way too
sure, but he
much.
did miss the cut at the Open. Did it
But
flare
so
up?
many guys missed the cut. I mean, Ludwig hits the ball so high to start with. That's the kind of place he has to learn how to win. Going to my point, learning how to play those conditions didn't go for him. Will that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I feel like the knee narrative kind of took a backseat at Pinehurst when he was able to play his way into
Yeah.
the 36-hole lead, and that was the point. Everyone was coming off of Valhalla saying, "Well, what's going on?" He seemed very solid at Pinehurst, and then from there, as you said, It's not like he was the only one that missed the cut at Royal Troon. There were a lot of big names that went home early on Friday, so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it could be something worth monitoring as we continue in the season, heading toward the playoffs. I think it's more for me just the temperament of learning for a guy who's still, just rounding through his first full year as a pro, right? Like 15 months ago, he's taken exams in Lubbock, Texas. There's a lot of learning to be done. He's picked up a lot of ground, but I don't think he's all the way to where he needs to be to contend against this field at that price.
And it's okay to not be bullish on Ludwig until years later. It's really okay. Long shot, Matt. What do you got?
I mean, let's just go with the hometown hero, right? Like Pavon winning in France. I mean, what a better situation I could imagine. I think I also like him a lot just because he's so fiery. We're talking earlier about countries or people who really want to put on for their country and win a medal. I think someone like Pavon, who has not had as much big wins, he had one win on the PGA Tour, like this would mean so much for him. Would a gold medal really mean that much for Scotty? Probably not. He's probably still thinking about the FedEx Cup playoffs and wanting to win that. For Pavon in France, once in a lifetime opportunity, that's really the only reason I'm picking him. I know this course is really hard. Like, he can spray a lot. I know he has that in his game. You have to be very dialed in at this course, but I just think the motivation factor, and if there's going to be any audience fan like interactions there, they're going to be rooting for Pavon. So
Listen, he was pretty dialed in at Pinehurst, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he hung in there much better than I thought he would, and the game that you need to hang out there for 72 holes is it's going to play well at Le Golf National. I would flip that on its head. I feel like it's a thin line map between having the motivation and feeling the pressure. I feel like this might be too much pressure in this situation for Pavon, knowing that, as you said, it's a once in a lifetime. This is the only time he's going to have an Olympics in France. He doesn't even know if he's going to play the next Olympics for France, but it's hard to know until they're in the cauldron on Saturday and Sunday how they would react. But I would lean more towards man, that's a big burden to bear for the Frenchman.
Does he have pressure though? Like, are people expecting him to win this? He's 60. He's plus 6,000.
How is he not having
Well,
pressure
if
in his
he's in
home
the mix
country,
on the weekend.
If he's in the mix on the weekend, sure. But in the beginning, I don't think people are really expecting it. I think it would be a whoa out of nowhere. Pavon, oh my God, what an amazing story situation.
I mean, he won an event
give you
this
that.
year, so.
Yeah, fair enough.
How about
It
you,
can
Will?
happen. It can happen. So I'm going to go a little further south from France to Italy. Guido Migliozzi, who did win at this course. He won the French Open a couple years back, so he has experience here and has been playing well. Listen, he spiked a good finish at the U.S. Open a couple years back. It got him in the Masters. He started to play a little bit more in the U.S., but he's focused now more on the DP World Tour, where he has won earlier this year at the KLM Open. He's had a couple other top 10 finishes. Played really solid a couple weeks ago at Royal Troon. And again, I think it's a good mix of definitely under the radar. He's way more under the radar than Pavon is, given his profile. But I think that this is someone going back to a course where he has played well. Maybe he can channel the good vibes of Francesco Molinari, who crushed American souls at Le Golf National back in 2018. I just think that, having this number on a guy who's still under the radar but has that comfort level is something that gets my attention for sure.
Maybe one day we'll be seeing Team Migleywood instead of Team Mollywood. I am going to
the chance won't be as good. The chance were really good for Tommy and Francesco, I'll tell you that.
I am going to lean hard, guys, into the narrative of these stars who are going to gain a step. Will, I go back to something you said.
You're just going all European Ryder Cup team. Just take Luke Donaldson.
Can you tell it's like a PTSD of like thinking
Seems
that
like
every European's going to make every putt in history just because I watched it over and over again on this exact same course? Yes. But all jokes aside, is that a little bit of the reason why I'm picking the Euros? Maybe a smidge, but I'm going to continue to go back to, again, something you were saying at the beginning of the year, Will. When are you ever going to get nice odds on Nicolai Højgaard again? Because this guy is going to be, I shouldn't say going to be, because we all know anything can happen. And the biggest star that you think is going to be a star 3 years from now could fall off the face of the earth. That could happen here. Not many people are predicting this to happen for Højgaard just because of the skill set he's already shown and the potential he's shown, especially already on the DP World Tour, all the stuff that he's done there. I think he is the player who can use this, exactly like Ludvig, as that chance with a little bit less pressure on you. Great fields, great course setup if things go his way. And we've seen him near the top. I mean, he was pretty high up there at the Masters early on, right, Will?
Yep.
We see him at the
sure.
top, and he can do it.
Yes. I mean, full disclosure, he then disappeared for about 3 months after he was at the top of the leaderboard at the Masters. But to your point, listen, he's still living in the shadow of Ludvig Aberg in terms of rising sensations from Europe. They were both on the Ryder Cup team last year, and Ludvig kind of has taken the top spot there. But to your point, Chris, it's not going to take much of a result from Højgaard to kind of start to not necessarily flip that script, but make them more on even footing. And so, yeah, potentially this could be one of those moments. He played pretty well in Italy last year at the Ryder Cup. It was, it wasn't a 5-0 performance or anything like that, but he didn't bomb out either. So, a similar course. They're not apples and apples in terms of Marco Simone and Le Golf National, but there are definitely some characteristics that are a little similar. I think this course is going to be a little tougher than the one that they saw in Rome last year, but Højgaard has started to steady himself in the last couple of weeks. So, hey, anything can happen, and I think that could definitely help shorten the gap, let's say, between him and Ludvig.
Matt, are you noticing that we're having the same conversation we had with you back in September about the Ryder Cup of why things can't go well? Because you were going to go Fleetwood, and then you had to go US of A.
Yeah, I like Fleetwood simply because, like, what can he win? He can't win on the PGA Tour. He can't win a major. He could win a gold medal. Like that. It's kind of sad to say because he's so good, and he's had a very good season, but this is something that he could win. It's interesting about Højgaard. I think he's absolutely a rising star. I was waiting for you to make a take on how good he was going to be as a star. But yeah, I think this is a stepping stone. Absolutely agree with that narrative. I mean, it's the world stage. I mean, everyone's got their eyes on it. It's golf, and it's going to be interesting to see who steps up and who doesn't.
We know that there's going to be someone off the grid that's going to end up on the medal stand. Maybe not the gold medal, but remember back, Rory Sabatini shot a 61 in the final round in Tokyo to get
That's
a silver
right.
medal. You had CT Pan winning a 7-for-1 playoff, which, man, what I would give for another 7-for-1 medal playoff. That's glorious content opportunity. So we'll see if we can get that again. But even Matt Kuchar, right, the forgotten man from Rio in 2016. So we've had Americans at each of the first two. We'll see if they can keep that streak alive. But you know that there's going to be someone among those three that was in that long shot category, or someone that was not necessarily on the first page of the odds makers list heading into this week.
All right, going to be fun. We'll see you next time.